Hi there, welcome to this week's video where we talk about the pole again. I'd just like to go into a little bit more detail about biomechanically why this is so very important for the horse. Just a bit of a reminder, when we talk about the pole in the horse, we're talking about this area here behind the horse's ear. And I'm including the atlas in this because the atlas connects to the base of the skull. And I also want to talk a bit about the axis, which is this big second vertebrae down the horse's neck. Now, remembering that flexion of the horse's head, or this general downward movement, increases the spaces between the vertebrae, not only in the neck, but all the way down the back. Extension, where we have our horses putting their head right up, actually closes those spaces up. Correct riding, obviously, we want to ensure the less harm and the most strength for the horse to be able to carry us for a long period of time. So we want to work with the horse in a way that increases those spaces as much as possible and strengthens the supporting muscles around that. To enable the horse to work like this, we really need to set him up for the best correct riding. And this is why this movement at the pole is so very important. We need correct and relaxed flexion, which will then enable all the connecting muscles, ligaments, tendons, etc. to set up this beautiful communication all the way down the spine and certain pulls in areas to the hind end region to allow the hind end to come through correctly and we get correct movement. So setting the horse up to work correctly, it's important to understand how this part of their biomechanics and their neck works because it has such a major impact all the way through the body. If we haven't got this first, then the hind end cannot work correctly. So let's have a look at the atlas joint specifically, and the photo here will show you how it has these flat wings that sit around the horse and it connects to the base of the skull. Just simply looking at the shape of that, you can see how that's truly set up for more of a nodding or flexion movement. Although it allows some lateral movement or sideways motion, mostly it does the flexion movement. In fact, about a third of the total flexion in the horse's neck is created at this point. So you can see if you're not flexed properly here at the pole, like your instructor tells you, it's virtually impossible to set up the rest of the horse's body for correct flexion. Now, we talked about communication and how this flexion, and I don't mean any woo-woo energy level communication, I actually mean the communication between the muscles and the ligaments, because as this head flexes, it creates a bit of a pull across the wither and it transfers and you can actually feel the muscle movement in the hind end of the horse. So if this isn't happening correctly, in fact, what you do is block correct movement. And one of the great ways to block correct movement is to let your horse tilt its head. Because again, if we look at the shape of that atlas, tilting that is going to block off the communication that then is transferred through to the rest of the horse. Now, the axis is another large vertebrae that's quite different in shape to some of the others. I've got another fantastic photo here. So the axis and the atlas joint is actually setting up any rotation that you need or lateral bend for the horse. In fact, between these joints, you're getting about 70% of the rotation again that you do throughout the entire neck. So you can see if we get these few joints wrong, you're setting yourself up for failure and correct communication for down the horse's back. As we carry on further down the neck and along the back, the flexibility, the movement, rotation, etc. is a lot less. Certainly as you go along the horse's back, it's quite minimal, but they're all very similar. So it's these joints here that are really setting up. In fact, most of the movement and most of the flexibility that is the horse uses to be able to do this correct work is through either the front end here or the hind tail end. So why is this bit so important? It is so influenced by the rider. Okay, so poor hands, tilting, making the horse stress against the bit or the contact is all setting this up for incorrect flexion, tension, or even tilting, which inhibits the movement further back. Something else that's really important is there are 8 cervical nerves that come through these vertebrae. Now, the first one comes out through the atlas, second one through the axis. Now, the range of movement of these means that we're also up for a bit of wear and tear there. If you're arthritic a bit like me, you'll understand what that means. And any bony changes that you get from actually allowing these bones to move too close to each other or inhibit each other could put compression on those nerves. Now, this can be shown often in lamenesses, patchy sweating. You'll get some nerve compression and bone compression. So this is why it's so important to keep these free and separated. So often when we're looking at our horse for problems due to behaviour, etc., we're looking at the legs and the back of the horse. I'm just saying, open your eyes about what can be happening up here that can be causing your issues as well. We really want to minimise potential bone changes and allow for the most flexibility and relaxation in this area as possible. Thanks, Spider. I think his attention span is about over. Now, before I finish this video, I'd really like to say a huge thank you to Dr. Helen Davies from South Africa, who actually has this fantastic Facebook page, if you'd like to follow her, called the Helen Davies Equine Research Project. And she spends a lot of time actually looking at the bones of horses that have died to actually look at how we inhibit them and what we do to those bones. And sometimes with a history on behaviour problems can be incredibly interesting. So thanks so much, Helen, and I hope you hop over and have a look at her project and support it. Thanks again for listening to this video. Hang in for next week so that you can see some beautiful stretches so that we can help maintain the flexibility of this area of the horse. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to my channel so you get notified of this, and hop on over to my website and see if there's some other information that you might like to grab for yourself. Thanks again and see you next week.